So what is being called the Miracle Draven seems like it's going to be the most powerful deck. Is that really going to be the case, or does the meta just need to adjust? We've had a lot of really big tournaments happening these past couple of days, and it has been making a meta shift that is raising some brows, but also worrying some people. Is that valid? Well, we're going to dive in and figure that out together. So this is going to be a really interesting transition because as we continue to develop and going into Spiritforged, it's getting ever closer to seeing what this meta is going to look like. And it can be a little bit intimidating at first, and rightfully so. I mean, we've seen Draven that his legend ability alone seems like there is so much upside with very little downside, which is why so many are flocking towards him. And you go ahead and you look at all of the tournament results and you're like, well, he's winning them all. What are we able to do about that? Not only that, over in Italy, we had the a winter tournament that was going on that we'll look at those deck lists and placements, and all four happened to be with Draven at the top, with Miracle Draven being there as the number one prize winner. Now, of course, this was a proxy deck tournament, which is interesting to consider, and the fact that it also had 330 players is really interesting and something to consider here. Now, I'm curious to see what's going to be going on here, because is this something to start raising concern about? Everyone's calling, even I saw Riftbound Meta or whatever, what his name is, he even said that potentially Called Shot is a little bit too overpowered and should be a card that's maybe introduced come set 5, but not necessarily in set 2. Does that have any validity there? Now, I get why so many people are terrified of this Draven deck, terrified of purple in general, just with the power that it contains. The fact that you do have card draw on one side, and very consistently so, and on the other, you have just movement and counters galore. You have things like Switcheroo, which just can switch mites at will, fine, that's awesome. Then on the flip side, you also have, Ride the Wind, Fight or Flight, all of these cards that you are able to utilize, and very powerfully so, to slow down your opponent. We saw how great Annie happened to be, to the fact that it was able to even start countering against the Kaisa meta and really slowing her down. It became the number one deck at the end of Origins. Not saying that we're done with Origins yet. We still got to wait, but you know what I mean. And this is something that is interesting here. And then now we go in with Draven, who has just as powerful, or if not the most powerful ability in this game. And he is able to just run rampant. Now, a lot of people are calling for the erratas. A lot of people are calling for things to change because, I mean, you go and look at these tournament winnings here. And again, this is going to be the Runes League Winter League with the Miracle Draven that has won. And you see the top players here all were Draven. And yeah, this is very much looking like the League of Draven, and that's something that might be a little bit disheartening for a lot of people here, and rightfully so. I mean, yeah, still, we were able to get like a Master Yi, a Kaisa, a Viktor even, and then Dravens, and even a Rek'Sai. Cool, that's awesome. But again, it's like, well, if you're not playing Draven, are you even trying to win? And it's like, well, yes, but it just seems like it's such an uphill battle. Even if they do happen to not have the perfect hand, it's still not very hard for them to get that card draw, to win some combats, to get back into the game. They make a bad start great if they just happen to win a battle or two. And this is proving that pretty decently well. And we've seen in all of these tournaments so far how everything is looking. I mean, you see in this top 8 how, 2/3 of the battle, or of the top 8 there, is Draven. Of course, there's a fourth. There's actually none there with 58 players there. And then also half, and even like a fourth there, or a little bit more than a fourth, almost a third. Is that a third? Math. And that's going to be the hardest part here is, yeah, then we also have half of Draven. And it's like, well, what can we do about that? And it's like, well, we might have to just endure it for the time being, which is crazy to say because we haven't even had this set release in English yet, and that can be a little disheartening for some. Now, the deck in question here is, of course, this, and the link is going to be placed in the comments below. We're not going to spend too much time on this because, yes, while this is a very powerful deck, I do think that this is something where the meta adjusts. We've seen that happen in Origins, and that's going to be how it happens here. So what ends up happening is people see this new deck in the meta, it goes crazy. This is also a very budget-friendly deck. That's one of the best things about it. And so you're looking at it and you're like, wow, it's so, well, except for Seal of Discord now being $45, but that's beyond that. Anyway, outside of that, this is a very budget-friendly deck, which is something very eye-catching for a lot of competitors here. Now, the thing about this deck, too, is it can be rather complicated to sometimes pilot. If you watch the finals, if you watch the video that I put in yesterday, you'll see that this deck was, still very difficult to pilot, but once you get the lines down, it can be very powerful. But the hard part is this deck creates so many different choices for you that it can be very difficult for you to try to stay into this game. Now, that's what it thrives at. Ezreal alone is going to be such a powerful card, being able to discard one, then draw two, but that's not the main thing. You can start with him in your hand or in your at the early game very easily just with how much card draw you are able to do. You do not use him to battle. Instead, you keep him back and you say, all right, here we go. I'm going to start doing my my repeatable actions, namely Called Shot, for free. And then on top of that, if you do have a Seal of Discord, it's like, okay, cool, boom. Called Shot is essentially free for you to be able to draw 4 cards. Or sorry, draw 2 cards looking at 4 cards. Sorry about that. And so Called Shot is just crazy for that ability alone. Then on top of that, you got Stack Deck, which goes and adds a card looking at the top 3, and then you put them at the bottom. Then you have Scrap Heap, which is when that is discarded. You then draw an additional card. Okay, cool. So you have things that utilize that, such as Traveling Merchant, such as Zon Warrens, which lets you draw or discard one and draw one when you conquer. And just keep in mind, Minefield does not count for the Scrap Heap. That does not count as a discard in this case. So Minefield saying that when you conquer here, put the top 2 cards of your main deck to your trash is not discard. Keep that in mind. Even still, that is a very powerful ability so that you can then utilize in getting out your Rashas later, which can also count towards your 4 cards that you need to play to be able to play Battering Ram out for 1. And that's the craziness of the deck. You're able to go and say, all right, I'm going to play free spell, 2 cost, and 2 cost, and then Battering Ram for 1 each. And so it's like, oh, okay, cool. Well, that's super broken. And yeah, it is. And that's the crazy part. And so, that's going to be the thing here to keep in mind is, well, what is the rest of this meta looking like? I mean, here we go on January 9th, the tournament in China here, and top 8 is looking half Draven at this point. Top 16 is still very much Draven. Now, I really like this because, of course, the first place Draven deck has a lot of the same system set up here. And again, this is a deck that was kind of released about a week before the Italy tournament, though it being such a big tournament caught a lot of eyes. And that's why that deck kind of stood out more than what you saw here. And so you see a couple of differences here. Very much the same, though. And rightfully so, a lot to be done here, and just such a powerful line that you are able to take to really dominate your game. Now, on top of that, we have a second place Viktor, and a Viktor seems to be like a really good counter to Draven in general. I mean, yeah, game 1 and what you saw with the Italy build is that it didn't even run hard bargain in game 1. And so a lot of your removal, a lot of your interactions are going to be able to be utilized incredibly well to the point where you can really take it to your opponent. Now, this is a really different second place build, and that's why I really wanted to keep an eye on this, because they do a lot of things the same that what we've seen. A lot of people are saying, hey, Xin Zhao, or, I'm saying that completely wrong. You guys are going to let me know in the comments. I know it. Anyway, with that, he comes in at 4 and he can be readied if you have 2 units. Really good. This is an interesting one, a pit pocket. When you play me, you may kill a gear with energy cost no more than 1, and if you do, play a gold gear token exhausted. And it's again utilizing the combos to just make sure that you can minimize the amount of gold that you have to, or the amount of power that you have to spend in this deck to really make it that much more manageable. And so really interesting to see. Then even a newer card, Sand Shifter. When you play me, kill an enemy unit with 3 might or less. That can already be a big difference maker there. And it can hit any unit, even ones in the base. So you can just be like, cool, boom, you're dead. You thought you were safe? No, you're not. And now, yes, it is a 5 and 2 power, but again, it looks like that was able to make a decent impact. And if not, then you just go ahead and side it out. You're perfectly fine to do so. Still, then, we also have seen Zonpunk, and it's an option that a couple of people run, but it's interesting because it says you may kill a friendly gear as an additional cost to play me, and if you do, you kill a gear. So just a great little flip-flop. You made a gold. All right, it's gone. Boom, that is dead. And you can blow up some pretty big gears in the process. Now, and this is the debate here, because we have the Vanguard Armory, which can, when you tap, create 3 1-might units, which is really good. And you're able to cheat that out with Jace, which can destroy a gear, which is usually just a gold. And then you are able to play out the Armory for 1 power. Now, a lot of people don't necessarily want to utilize that combo because that almost seems like pie in the sky, where it can be such a difficult combo for you to hit. But if you do hit it, it can get you so much further ahead, even with the gear destruction that is currently circulating around. But this is a good alternative because it's like, instead, we're taking that step back. We're saying Jace isn't necessarily as important, nor is the Armory. Instead, we are going to continue to play this. I also really love that they have Kaisa Evolutionary. It's one that we haven't necessarily seen a whole lot, but she specifically says that, one, she has ganking, which is awesome, and then when I conquer, you may play a spell from your trash with the energy cost less than your points without paying its energy cost, then recycle it. You still have to pay the power cost. So if you're at 5 points, well, boom, you got another Imperial Decree just for conquering, essentially. You do have to recycle the 2, but if you're saving 5 runes for the turn, awesome. If you're at 6 points, you can play a Singularity, and it's like, all right, boom, 6 damage to 2 units, that can do a lot. And then, of course, you have the board wipe combo of Imperial Decree with Bellows Breath, which can be repeated, and you then go and deal 1 damage to up to 3 units at the same location. So really cool to be able to see a lot of that. And I mean, Viktor is going to be that counter. Now, next is really interesting, too. I love this because we have the Annie here, which is almost following the same thing. And I have some gameplay where we made Miracle Draven as Annie, and there was a couple of differences that I did end up making here, but it was able to still have a really good impact, and to take it even to Aurelia when I was going against my friend Lancet. That video is probably going to be out tomorrow. And so this is a cool one because it's following a lot of the same ideas of using the stack deck, of using the call shot to be able to get out the Nocturnes and to be able to play the battering rams. I do kind of like the Nocturne play maybe a little bit more than Scrap Heap. I'm still play testing on my end, but we'll see. It is still a really fun idea, though, because there's a lot of ways that you, even if you get out 1 Nocturne in this case, that's a free 4 might that you are able to then utilize. If it does get stuck in your hand, yeah, that just sucks. That's just how it is. But still, even outside of that, this is a really fun build to be able to take a look at, and something that, you know, I'm keeping an eye on because, again, I don't think Annie is, you know, down for the count, essentially. I think she still has a lot of versatility to be used here that can be utilized incredibly well, and just hasn't quite been there yet. And I really do think Miracle Draven, with some alterations, can work really well as Annie. So we'll see, but it's going to be really cool. Now, one that I absolutely love is Azir. Now, we haven't seen a lot of Azir representation in this meta, so the fact that then now you are able to go in and see a 6th place Azir in a big playing field. I mean, 110 players is nothing to bat an eye at. And then here it is. It's like, wow, what is it able to do then? And what can it possibly have up on the other decks that maybe weren't necessarily able to make it to that top 8 position? I mean, that's a lot of rounds that you were able to make to be able to make it to that top 8 position. So really cool to be able to see. And the biggest thing here is that the Sand Soldiers being able to be created for so little and then immediately have Weapon Master is powerful. The difficult part is that if you do go and have your gear destroyed, it is a very difficult game for you at that point. But it also has some of the best finishing moves of the set, because it's like, well, with Azir in particular, it's like, all right, well, when I attack in, I can move any units with me, which is interesting, though, because he doesn't even have the Azir in this deck. I mean, it would be in his champion zone, but still really interesting to see that he's not playing more than one. You don't necessarily need to, but it is still a really interesting deck combination here to see. One that is also really interesting is Blade of the Ruined King, which is really cool because it says equip and you have to kill a friendly unit you control, but you get +4. So again, though, that's a 2 power cost. So I can see why a lot of people might be a little bit hesitant on stepping in on that, but still really cool to be able to see. Also, Death Grip is just so incredibly powerful because you destroy one of your sand soldiers. If they had an equipment attached to them, and more often than not they will, then you can just, have 8 might added to another unit. That makes it incredibly powerful for you to hold. Again, though, you have to be so careful about being defied of being shut down, because if that does get countered, well, you just lost a unit and you lost the battle. So you have to play around that a little bit, but it's still really cool to be able to see. And then otherwise than that, we even have like an Aurelia here that was really interesting. We haven't seen Aurelia really do as much as what we would like. And I really would say that it comes down to how complicated of a deck she can be to pilot. Not only do you need to know the ins and outs of her, but you need to know your matchups incredibly well. And that can be difficult because it's like, yeah, you have all of these spells that you are able to utilize, but if they die, what do you do? I mean, here, even in this 6th place deck, for example, they have 1, 3, 4, 5, 6. They have 6 units in this entire deck. So if you happen to say, all right, you got your Aurelia out, yeah, she's dead, and they only have spells in their hand, it's like, well, what can I do about that? How can I interact here to get things properly done? And it's like, I don't know if I can get back into this game. And so sometimes it does just really slow you down in that case, and you got to be careful about how you go about that, which is why there's so many spells to try to keep your units alive, because that's going to be the biggest thing for you, is just making sure that they can stay on the board so you can keep going. Now, the biggest thing here with Aurelia too is that sometimes she can really struggle on getting over that big might. And so if someone goes and stacks a battlefield, well, as an Aurelia player, you're only going to have maybe 1 unit out, maybe 2, and Aurelia is going to be your bread and butter. Every time you target her, of course, she gets +1 added every time she's ready. So she's immediately a 5 at every turn if she hasn't ready yet, And that's going to be a difficult situation to use here as well, because it's like, what can we then do to start getting things moving? And that's going to be tough, but I really do like how all of this is looking. And again, this meta, while it might seem that it is a little scary, it still is something to definitely keep an eye on. I mean, here even with 31 Dravens that were entered in, 4 were able to make it into the top 8. Now, if we go and look at the top 16, Draven has a little bit better of a showing of 9 of the 31 decks. And even then, though, Viktor being able to make half of his field at that point to be able to break into the top. And so really interesting to see here, and gonna be curious to see how the rest of this meta continues to develop. Again, I don't think that Miracle Draven is going to be such a plague. It is going to be a very powerful deck. I'm not saying that it won't be, but I mean, there's going to be maybe that we start running unchecked power. Maybe we start, utilizing a lot more removal or trying to get around those types of things. There's answers out there. And I think, again, that one of the biggest things that made this deck function so well is that people weren't necessarily prepared for it. That's what's going to make these up-and-coming tournaments, the regionals in China this weekend, Italy, Vegas, all of that is going to be very interesting as we continue to go and see what kind of surprises might be being developed here, because a lot of people are playtesting and they're keeping a lot of their secrets low to the ground. So time will tell, but it's going to be a really interesting meta nonetheless. So let me know what you guys think about the meta here and what could be the answer against Draven. Let me know down in the comments below, and until next time, have a good one.